endorsement or the nomination of certain persons for the role of ministers?
I think just to make it a bit simpler, I mean, I see the president as a coach who needs to put together his team to win a match. And at each point in time, you might need a player to play a certain role for you. So that is why this whole chain is sometimes a bit confusing for me, because I am the coach. I know why I'm picking this person to this particular position to play this game for me. Because in the end, I have a game plan that I need to execute. So whether the person meets your expectations or not, I am the one who is in charge. And I know why I've put the person there to execute a particular thing. So the fact that the person meets the minimum criteria, which we've already discussed, I mean, that is enough. I know what else I have assigned that particular person to do. Because, you see, sometimes we see things that somebody doesn't see. And I'm sure the president sees something in the particular nominee that maybe I might not see. So whatever that I try to get out of the person might not, in the end, be beneficial to me. But then in the game plan of the president, it might be important. So, as I said, let's use just a football game as an example. And we know sometimes we spectators, we sit there and we say, you should have played this particular player. But you don't know the game plan of the coach.
Okay. That's interesting. I mean, this particular analogy has been used by Andrew before. I remember him specifically saying that. But coming back to the specific responsibilities of a minister of state, what does the Constitution say?
All right. So if you look at Article 57, I mean, coming down, you realize that full executive powers is vested in the president. And Article 58(3) allows the president to pass on some of these powers to persons subordinate to him. In this particular case, ministers of state or deputy ministers of state, to exercise those powers. And so every minister or deputy minister, when appointed, is basically appointed to go and exercise the powers that the president would have exercised had the president decided to exercise those powers himself. And so basically you are the chief servant of the president in that particular ministry. And practically, the job of a minister of state is policy formulation, policy coordination, policy implementation. And that's why the argument has been made several times whether the minister of state need be a technical person in the first place. And I'm sure that if you remember very well, I have always argued that apart from the office of the Attorney General and Minister of Justice and maybe the Minister for Finance, which requires as a matter of necessity technical expertise, all other ministries to a very large extent for me require more, in my opinion, of your administrative capabilities than even technical. Because in any case, the technical you would pick up when you go to the ministry.
But shouldn't it be the case? And I'm happy that you mentioned those three: policy formulation, policy coordination, and policy implementation.
Right.
At the formulation stage, Nanajiman, at the formulation stage, is it not required that you have a good grasp of matters as far as that particular sector is concerned to contribute or even think through the suggestions that will be even made by the technocrats at the point of formulating the policy? Should there not be a certain level, not necessarily you being schooled in that particular space, but at least you subjecting yourself to some education, some training of sorts going into such a ministry?
Benjamin, when you pose this question, then you start seeing the defect in our governance structure or system. If I'm to ask you, what is the national policy or plan of Ghana? You will not be able to tell me. Bear in mind that the policy formulation is actually at the political party level through their manifestos. And so for whoever goes in there, if in the minds of the MPP, the ruling party, they believe that at this point in Ghana's, in this stage of our democracy, what they deem most important is for university students not to pay fees. Whether anybody thinks it is a bogus idea or not, whoever goes to that ministry has that mandate to go and implement that which has already been agreed, probably even in opposition, without having any idea of the actual figures or what really the situation is on the ground, because we are only given, we take what we are fed by our agencies and by whoever is in government at that particular time. So some of these policies that we talk about are actually things that were actually formulated when, for all you know, at the time, that party has never had the opportunity to be in power. So if you take, let's say, the GCPP, the CPP, Ekadonko's party, if there should ever be a time where any of these parties come to power, the ministers that will be chosen by whoever wins on their ticket is actually going there to implement policies which, let's take Ekadonko's, she was talking about free cocoa, whatever, free this, almost everything was free in Ghana. So
would have been
if
free.
the policy has already been formulated, why are you saying that the person who is going to implement it has to have some idea about? Because the sector ministries we have are such that we have technical advisors in all these ministries.
No, but stopping you right there, saying that the political party has already formulated it.
Yes.
You know, they will be going in to work with a civil service structure.
Good.
Where you may have stated it, a certain policy position on a particular matter. But how to cascade it into implementation, you need one who will be able to sell the idea to the civil service structure for them to break it down into implementable portions. Then you can see to the execution and you get to coordinate it.
I'll tell you this, that I think in Ghana, our ministries by far have one of the best structures. It's also sometimes an issue of implementation, but then again, the offices have been set up. You go to the ministry that you may probably think they are not doing anything. You'll be shocked to know that you have actually people who have studied in those areas sitting there in the ministries. You have a monitoring evaluation department. You have those who are the technical guys. You have the operational guys and all of that. Now, the point I am making is that, flowing from what Andrew said, the minister's duty is more of a manager, making sure that the resources you have, i.e. the human resources, together with the capital or the budgetary allocations that have come to the ministry, are being used such that you are able to give effect or life to whatever is in the manifesto or is in the policy. So the president has taken you there. And let's not forget, in 2017, the president did something very important. It was quite instructive. When he was appointing his ministers.
Good. I'm happy you are going there.
He actually told us why he was appointing Mr. A or Mr. B. So that you understand that I want Mr. Jogati to go to the railways. Why? Because there's going to be a lot of negotiations, because it's something we are now starting. I need somebody who understands these things, who is good on, who is able to negotiate some of these deals to be able to get the best value for money for the country. And that's what I'm taking. I want Mr. Boache Jacko to go to energy. This person, blah, blah, blah. Yes, it hadn't been done. It was something that we had never seen before.
It was new.
But at the very least, look at the people he chose. I think just about 2 were going into areas where you can say they are comfortable, because almost all of them, from Mr. Kandapa to Napo, they were not technical people who they didn't have that background. But we saw the performance.
And so, given that precedent that he had set, that, I mean, he explaining to us or giving us a sense into his thinking of what he has for the ministry, which indeed is one of the questions we are asking. Does the appointment of a particular person speak to the president or the appointer's mindset or plans for that particular ministry? It comes to bear. Having set that precedent, don't you think beyond he not having a legal obligation to explain to us why he's appointing someone to a particular ministry, with that kind of precedent, does he not bear a certain constructive obligation to continue in that stead, at least to give us a sense of what is influencing his choice? I mean, he may not have to tell us everything, but having started off that way, should he not have a certain consistency in that regard? Still staying with you, Nana Agyemang.
Well, I would have wished the president did that, just to give us a certain understanding of why he's choosing who to go where. But I don't think the opportunity is entirely lost, because we have the Meet the President interactions. I am quite sure that if our journalists will also do their work well and ask thought-provoking questions which can elicit responses that ordinarily we may not be able to get from the presidency through a Facebook message. But when you have such an opportunity, a very rare opportunity, to ask the president questions on the state of the nation and what is going on, you ask him, Mr. President, if you could share with us what influenced your decision to appoint Benjamin to Ministry X or Y. And at the very least, it gives us some understanding. I would have loved or wished that the president did what he did in his first term. But unfortunately, it is not even a convention for you to say that he has to carry through with it. You understand?
You know what? I have a number of appendages out of that question, but let me throw some to you, citizen. You know, we have the Appointment Committee of Parliament for a reason, to do this vetting. I mean, journalists asking thought-provoking questions at the Meet the Press session, it's after the fact, where the person has already been approved or disapproved of. But don't you think we would have had a great opportunity, especially even the members of the Appointment Committee, to have a sense of what the president has in mind for the ministry, to inform even the questions they will be asking the person when that person appears before them when they come to Parliament?
I think so, absolutely. And that is why I'm not too sure about our vetting proceedings. And it keeps changing all the time. And this won't be my first time I'm making this comment. That you see, sometimes some of the questions that are being asked on the floor during vetting, I'm not sure what it seeks to achieve.
Well, we'll go into that. We'll go into that.
Because and coming back to the analogy which I didn't know Andrew has ever used, it makes it so simple. Because see, I know why the president might not have shared his view. I mean, no question has been asked specifically about, okay, your political party's position on this area, which is the ministry that you are going into. What testing the nominee to find out if he or she even knows the position of their party in relation to that particular ministry. I've not even seen that. And so, okay, so what are you going to do to support that whole process?
Because indeed, the manifesto of the MPP is there.
Yes.
Right.
So
even without the president telling us, we should know.
yes. So if you ask me what is the difference between an asphalt road and what else? I mean, I'm not saying somebody asked, but I mean, I'm not too sure how that is policy, you know. And you see, there needs to be a lot of public education as well. You know, when Andrews was reading the job of a minister and responsibilities, I was going to ask that, hey, don't we know the job of a parliamentarian? Have we been sticking to that? Now, parliamentarians are contractors. They are doing all kinds of different other things, right? So, I mean, we should know that some of the things that we say by law are not what is always happening. So if we go strictly, and that's why I say if we go strictly by the kind of fact-finding mission that some people are trying to do and correct something that you said out there, mission that it turns out to be that people are asked questions about what they said some time ago and whether they should check whether it is true or not, or do you still stand by it or not? How does it relate to the ministry and the performance of my activity that I'm going to perform? Unless that is to test the sound of the whether the people have sound mind. Because some of the questions are probably because somebody who has sound mind is somebody who should make rational judgments, right? And somebody who should show some form of understanding of a particular issue. So maybe the questions are to check or to help us to see whether some of the nominees have sound mind. If not, then we have a lot to do.
Yeah, you've gone already into the vetting process, and we'll get there in just a bit. But I want to ask this particular last question about certain attributes. I mean, we've all worked in organizations when it comes to management, and Andrew has elucidated very clearly that the role of a minister is one of a manager. I mean, some students or even teachers of strategy will say it's beyond the manager, it's actually a leader. The question is, by way of attributes or skill sets or characteristics, what are some of those attributes that a minister should possess as far as being a leader or a manager of a whole sector of our economy or national life is concerned? Andrew, coming to you.
All right. I think before I get to that, it's important that I clarify a certain position I've held, that you need not be a technical person for certain ministries. However, there is the need to have basic knowledge and understanding of matters in the area. And so if you go to Parliament to be vetted for the position of a fisheries minister, you should definitely know about pear trawling. You cannot be excused if you don't know about issues pertaining to pre-mixed fuel and the politics thereof. And so, yes, I admit that you do not need to be a master, an expert in the field, but at least the basic knowledge that you and I may have, just by virtue of following matters, even on air, should be what you should also possess when you appear before the vetting panel. And so you cannot be excused, all in the name of I am not an expert. I'm not required to be an expert. That's point number one. Point number two is that it should not be lost on us at all that in selecting ministers, the choice of a minister is based for me on two major factors. One, the ability to conduct the work of a minister in that particular ministry for the good of Ghana. And two, and I'm sure even though we do not like to talk about it, it is important, the continuity of whichever party the appointing authority belongs to.
So the political expediency of it.
Highly important. We cannot close our eyes to it. And so, yes, it's important that Mother Ghana benefits from you. But it is equally important that your political party also benefits from your appointment. It cannot be lost on us. We cannot pretend it does not exist. Now, qualities of who a good minister should be. Like I've always argued, he should be a good manager or a good leader. And this means that, first of all, somebody who is willing to learn. That for me is the most important thing.
A willingness to learn.
Willingness to learn. You should be malleable. You should be able to be taught. Because in your first few weeks or months at the ministry, you have to sit at the feet of the technical persons to take you through the rudiments, to tell you what has been done, what is being done, and what must be done. So for me, you should be teachable. That's point number one. Point number two, it is very important that you should be able to coordinate human beings. And so you should be able to coordinate human resources. It's highly essential because you're going to meet a whole lot of people coming from different backgrounds, people who have been in the ministry for probably over 30 years. And so you should be able to coordinate all of these persons. Thirdly, you should have that desire and zeal to make things work. And so when you sit before the panel, we should see in you somebody who needs or wants to make things work. I also believe that you should be somebody who should be seen to be visionary. And so beyond even what the political party has decided, beyond what is the norm, the very mundane and common things that is done, we should see in you somebody who has ideas that nobody even around the table has thought of. Somebody who is seen to be exceptional in his thinking capabilities. And then for certain positions as well, even your personality, your outlook, how you carry yourself about. And so for certain positions, your ability to even speak should be very important. Because for certain positions, your job may entail a lot of face-to-face engagements with persons who matter. And so the Minister for Foreign Affairs, for instance, should be somebody who should be able to, to mingle with persons, should be able to communicate, and should be able to flow with others. And so we should look for that in that person.
Minister for Information, I guess.
For information should definitely be somebody who is able to communicate to others. So I believe that there are core qualities that everybody should have, and there are very specific qualities to some particular ministries.
Just to add to
Yes.
what Andrew said, I think that sometimes we want to pick and choose how these qualifications should be applied. Now, Andrew just made mention of the Minister for Foreign Affairs, and something struck me that just imagine that because some people are making the argument that English is not the test for which you measure a person's intelligence.
Yeah.
How and Chi or Ga or Fanti is not an international language. And we have a foreign minister who cannot express
Him or
herself in the English language, neither
French, Spanish.
no international language. This is the person representing us probably at the UN level. At the very least, when we as a people have decided that our official language is English, the laws we make in this country are not written in local languages. There is no law which is written in our local language. So the work of an MP,
not even bylaws at the district or municipal level.
forget about it. Because at the end of the day, you cannot. That's not what your official language is English, so you can't even write it in any other language. You can have the Information Service Department go around and explain it in the local, but it is not written in any local language. And so, at the very least, there are certain expectations, and that's where Andrew makes that point that look, in as much as there's a political expediency or the political aspect of it, the truth of the matter is that these people are managers. If I were to be the president, I will appoint people that when people look at them, they see a semblance of things we know or we look up to in the president. Everybody knows the president to be one of the best orators that we know. He speaks very well. He has good command over the English language and French. So at the very least, if you are delegating your powers, should it not stand to reason that you will delegate it to somebody who, when the people look at that person, they see some of your qualities in
there? Let's do some reaching with respect to this particular matter.
I think both of them now come back to when we started.
They are aligning with you, eh? They are aligning with you. So you see, let me do some reaching here.
You started with
So, you see, the law is the law. Let's do some reaching here. We've spoken about the qualifications for a minister as being the qualifications for an MP.
Yeah.
Now let's go to the parliament. When it comes to the language for use, as far as parliamentary business is concerned, it is English and English.
But there's an exception.
Where the exception is?
That where the member wishes to express himself.
Please get close to the mic so that we can hear
Where
you.
the member wishes to express him or herself in
Another language.
Exactly, in a local language. And they list the ones that I believe they have the facilities to translate or transcribe, which are English, Ga, Chi, Nzima, Dagbani, Hausa, and some other. I think there are about 7.
Aware, of course.
Exactly, Ewe. So it is, I think it's Rule 47 in the standing order somewhere, which makes mention of that. So it cannot be that it is only English, except otherwise if the member wishes to express himself in any of these languages.
And if the person wishes to express in those languages, what is the requirement? The person has to explain.
No, the Parliament makes provisions for some of these things. So it's just like when you go to court and you say you want to speak or testify in a local language.
Yes.
The court will make provisions for the court-appointed interpreters to come and explain, because the official language for the court is English. So just like Parliament, because they recognize, and that even should tell you that the framers of our laws understand that it's not everybody who is going to be in Parliament at a particular point in time
who
that
be
can
able to
speak English. And so we have listed these, unless you
But
go
will
beyond-
understand.
Exactly. Because
No, I'm asking a question, but we'll understand, because it's different when you're speaking. But what if
Exactly.
somebody is speaking?
will you be able
We
to
will
understand it?
understand.
and that is what I'm saying, that Parliament.
Maybe I can read it out.
So you
Yes,
can
please read it.
So, Order 47. The proceedings of Parliament shall be conducted in English language, except that a member may exercise the option to address the House in either Akan, Nzima, Ga, Ewe, Hausa, Dagbani, Dagari, or in any other local language, provided facilities exist in the House for its interpretation.
Good. So that is for the interpretation as spoken by this person. But the question is, if the person does not understand English, will the person be able to follow the proceedings and give whatever contribution, be it in English or any other local language?
Parliament are masters of their own rules. And I know that if there is a situation where a member of Parliament comes and says, I do not speak English, I do not understand English, it is incumbent on Parliament to make available whatever facility to make sure that person understands, because bear in mind that this is not somebody there by their own rights. They have been elected.
Right.
And so he says, I don't understand. We have to make it available. It's just like in court. Even when lawyers ask questions in English, the interpreter's duty is to explain to the witness or to whoever that this is what the lawyer is saying. What do you have to say? So in the same way, I'm sure when the reverse will apply.
Let's look at the practical expediencies or the or practical exigencies of Parliament as we have it. Per the standing orders of Parliament, every member of Parliament should be in at least a committee,
Yes.
doing work at the committee level and both contributions on the plenary.
Yes.
At the plenary, if you are unable to understand some of these things, given the pace at which work is done in Parliament, practically, do we have a system that supports people of the sort?
But
Yeah, Andrew.
you see, Benjamin, we should. We should. Let me give you.
I'm not talking about what we should. Do we?
No, you see, I'm sure that what has happened over the period is that almost everybody who goes into Parliament at least has a basic understanding of the English language, or pretends to understand, or pretends to have a basic understanding of the English language, and so there does not arise the need for some of these facilities you're talking about. But let me push the argument. We recognize the fact that there are certain persons amongst us in our society who, by virtue of no fault of theirs, do not have all the faculties in terms of sight, hearing, and so on and so forth, to enable them, get things as fast as some of us would do. But of course, it does not take away the right of somebody who is visually impaired to go into Parliament. Neither does it take away the right of somebody who is visually impaired to be appointed a minister of state. And it is incumbent on the state to ensure that all such persons are provided the relevant facilities to be able to carry out their work.
Okay.
And if we all remember, there was, I think during the NDC administration, the Minister for Chieftaincy
Yes.
at a particular point in
I think
time,
Honorable Dana, yeah,
was visually impaired. But of course, facilities have to be made available for you to do your work.
Beautiful.
And I'm sure he did so.
And I'm happy you bring this up. So now we are making a case here on Candid Voice that if it is the case that we really seek to be representative of the diversity that we have in our country, then properly so, provisions should be made for the various diverse groups
Right.
that we have in our country as far as our leadership and governance is concerned. And this is very something we want to be very emphatic on. And so if the facilities don't exist, we should make provision for that, because it comes with the conversations around even the building code,
Right.
making provision for people, for instance, who are-
Disability friendly.
Exactly.
Right.
You know, and all of that. But that's fine. I think let's cut to the chase and speak about one particular nominee who has come up for a lot of conversation. People have taken all kinds of sides on this particular person. And I'm looking right now at the profile of Honorable Mavis Hawa Kumsin, who is the Member of Parliament for Ewutu Senya East constituency. Reading her profile, her hometown is Salaga. She belongs to the New Patriotic Party. In terms of education, she has a master's in public administration. This was in 2017, and that's from GIMPA. And I see a CPA in public administration 2016. She also has a degree in education from the University of Education, Winneba. In terms of her employment, it's indicated here, worked with the Ghana Education Service as a headmistress, and she was also a teacher. Situating the conversation around Honorable Hawa Kumsin's performance at the vetting committee or the appointment committee, there were matters around people say, oh, maybe she doesn't really appreciate the language, and so we shouldn't judge her by that. We should be judging her more about her understanding of the fact, the substance of the ministry she's going to, and all of that. With this kind of profile, are we able to have an excuse for her when it comes to the English language, given that all these qualifications were actually acquired through the use of English language? Starting with you, Nanajiman.
Well, I usually don't like to take on, and you know my stance on some of these things, but I think with Honorable Hawa Kumsin, it's an exceptional situation. And in law, usually there's always an exception to the rule. I would have held her brief if the issue was just about how she expressed herself. I don't think that was the issue. Her issue was beyond expression. The issue was about even her basic knowledge and understanding of the office for which she has been appointed. We have had nominees appear before the committee who don't speak the finest or the flariest of English, but at the very end of everything, they are able to at least communicate to you what they intend to do, the understanding of the work they have been appointed to do. Now, when it comes to Honorable Hawa Kumsin, I did not for a second, listening to her, maybe at the point she actually did put something across that I would have understood, that maybe I wasn't listening in, but for the time I listened, not a single answer or response to any question. And that is where I make the point that, look, it will also not be right to situate this whole conversation just because of one performance. But then again, it raises critical issues that we have to address right from the appointing authority. You understand?
Mm-hmm.
Because people make that argument, which I find a bit offensive, that, oh, she's going to a place where you're dealing with fishermen. Look, the Ministry of Fisheries and Aquaculture is not a ministry for fisher folks. If that is even your understanding of the work of such a minister, quite clearly you don't
gotten it
understand
wrong.
what you're supposed to do. So people say, oh, she can speak to the people, speak their language. That is probably 10% of the work that she's going to do. The politics even around pre-mixed fuel in itself.
Mm-hmm.
And I was a bit surprised that the president did not appoint a coastal person for that ministry.
Well, actually, Ewutu Senya, for the
No.
central region,
Kaswa is not, if you want to go on that, it's not a coastal town. is in the central.
It's more
region,
inland.
It's not a coastal town. You understand?
Yeah.
So you can't say Domeko Abenya is a coastal town.
Because it's in
Domeko Abenya-
Accra.
Exactly.
Okay. Okay.
You understand? So that was my expectation. But and especially when you look at the coastal towns, look at the performance of the MPP. You would have thought that in picking someone for such a ministry, you even want to understand what happened, that you lost almost all the seats along the coast.
Except Botiano, English, Yamanfu.
You understand? So, for me, for Honorable Howard Kumsin, I think she did a poor job. But I don't expect her to be rejected because she has met the constitutional requirements.
Right.
If you want to disqualify her, it cannot be on the basis of vetting. Because the qualification, she has met this. What are you going to do? You can't do anything about it. Unfortunately, that is the system.
For those of you who have not